cold called from the big blind, which is always a great sign in terms of quality of the games. And here it's check to Johnny, checks back, turn our money, bets half pot. Kind of a weak looking bet if you ask me on this kind of coordinated board. So if I had much of anything, I might even be looking to call or bluff raise. This is where I'm saying people kind of give away something in these weaker games. But yeah, he gets a fold. So why do I mention this hand? Because the very next hand, our money limps. We have ace-9 offsuit in the cutoff. And if you think about game flow, if someone just limped and just min-raised and got 3-bet, next hand he gets dealt aces, he's probably going to min-raise again, right? That's the way the brain works. You have this pattern recognition and repetition. And so if your last raise got 3-bet and now you have something that doesn't want to get 3-bet, you might actually be more likely to limp. And I think that means that this is an even weaker limp than usual. So very important to raise ace-9 offsuit here. Pretty sure this wins you money. Very high chance you get a pre-flop fold. And if you don't, we'd be looking to bluff him out on a lot of different runouts. Generally speaking, when people limp, we assume they're a bit passive and pile on aggression and expect them to fold too much. A lot of that is due to expecting them to have kind of low proficiency in understanding what's a backdoor draw and how much they are supposed to float versus certain bet sizes. Okay. And number 2, we have ace-9 off top left. Queen 8-4 rainbow board, we see bet for a small size. This is one of the 2 basic bet sizing strategies you have in poker. You generally either start small, polarize later, or you polarize straight away. Something we cover in depth in Lamb 2.0. And here our opponent check raises us extremely small. I'd immediately be suspicious. I'd kind of say, pay attention to this guy. This almost seems like a cheap bluff. I wouldn't do anything about it with this hand, but I'd definitely keep my eyes out on the sizing variations that this guy shows in the future. Very high chance you can catch him with some sort of sizing tell. Now, as we kind of keep going, we'll go to 555. Again, we have ace-king off on the bottom and 10-7 on the top right. Ace-king, we bet flop small, get the 10 of clubs turn, and here we decide to give up, and I feel like this is a spot where we really should have looked to continue bluffing. The general thing here is that when you're early position versus the small blind, his range is so tight, we shouldn't really be looking to show down ace-king on a queen-high board. And generally speaking, ace-king on queen-high boards makes for a nice bluffing hand. Kind of blocking top range, having overs that can improve the top pair. Just a great hand to barrel with, so I'd have liked to see that at a very high frequency here. Meanwhile, top right, at 10-7 off, we're going to check raise deuce 8-9, which I think is a nice play. Turn the 4 of hearts. Generally, brick turns, you're supposed to continue with your draws, but check some of them. You kind of end up having too many to bluff with all of them. And the interesting thing here is Hero messes up the size. He bets 68 big blinds into 45, leaving himself after he's going to get called with 110 blinds. So generally speaking, this is a spot where you want to be sizing geometric. You want to go evenly between turn and river. It's an important mathematical concept that once you understand will just directly add to your win rate, and this is a classic situation for it. So it's small technical error there. And here on the river, I think we certainly want to follow through with 10-7. And the idea with that is, in these weaker games, people kind of peel speculative, and they also don't hand read well. So even though the ace doesn't really improve us, it could still easily scare someone holding something like pocket queens or pocket jacks. Or king 9. Kind of scare him just because he's not grasping the thread of the hand well and not understanding how uncommonly this card improves us. And then there's also just soft games. People peel speculative, so a kind of good rule of thumb to have is when you get to the river, just keep firing. That's generally one of the most overfolded streets. So here Hero gives up, gets shown the queen jack. Very painful, definitely would have folded had we fired. I mean, who knows, but probably would have. And I think kind of principle of keep firing with hands that never win a showdown should just hold true in these games. Don't be under the impression you can never bluff weaker players. They do call down loose, but they also get to the river very loose. So they do end up actually in terms of frequencies folding too much, I would say. Next hand, pocket tens on the bottom middle table. This is a classic spot to squeeze with tens. Generally speaking, you might say tens isn't good enough to squeeze, but it's good enough to play, so I want to call. The way I'd like you guys to think of this is calling out of position with so many players isn't very attractive. With tens, if you have an overpair, you can't do much with it. You're basically set mining. You're turning your tens into something like fours. So greatly devaluing the hand. And yes, it's not kind of purely good enough to squeeze in the sense that if someone shoves over your squeeze, you're not doing very well. But these are loose players. They're going to call you wide with hands you dominate. And loose players, another thing is they're not going to rebluff you often. So this is just, and it's funny to make this shift rather than being a premium. This is the bottom of your squeezing range, but it's still in there and it should be there. And you want your squeezing range in these places to be very linear. You don't want to have a 5-7 suited in there. We'd much rather have tens, have everyone call their deuces, their ace fours, all these things. And if you get shoved on when you do this, so be it. We fold tens pre-flop and get away from a cooler. So I think certainly should have squeezed here. And what ends up happening is we call. The next guy squeezes, and he squeezes really big. He gets called by the original raiser. And here actually folds tens, which I think is perfectly fine. Again, tens is just not doing a lot better than deuces once it comes like this. And I want you guys to see the showdown so you understand the type of game we're playing here, as we have aces on the top left at the same time. So king 4-5 rainbow, amazing board for the squeezer. He should almost always bet, but he checks. Suddenly open shoves the turn, a bet size that makes no sense here. And he just turned a flush draw. And his opponent has 6-4 offsuit for the win. And guys, we didn't squeeze tens against these guys. So this is how you're going to make money here, right? These guys play too many hands. Punish them by overplaying your top hands. This goes for pre-flop as well. Just squeeze tens. If they shove pre-flop, get out of the way. And if not, suddenly you're with tens against 6-4 off and you're winning this hand. So I think very important to be more aggressive and more loose. You don't have to wait for the nuts to squeeze. Kind of pushing those thinner edges. And we're going to skip ahead. Pocket jacks on the bottom middle, and we're going to have a similar type of mistake. Here someone raises to 3 bigs, small blind re-raises to 10 bigs or 5 straddles. This is what I call a juice up the pot raise. Very often people who make these small 3 bets just feel like gambling with a king 8 suited or a 5-6 suited or something like that. And they're looking at their hand. They want to be aggressive. They don't understand the dynamics too well, but they're not worried about giving you odds because they're just looking to gamble. So this is a very classic spot to just pump it up to something like 25 or 30 bigs. If your fan shoves, get out of the way, but very often someone's going to call you with a 6-4 offsuit type of hand. So I would really have liked to see a 4 bet here. Instead, we see a call, which I think is overall a weaker play. The original squeezer checks. On us, we should probably bet jacks. But fish and wine checks. He gets instantly min raised. Again, jacks is just good enough to call here. Don't start putting people on any kind of crazy tight range like we saw with the 6-4 and the a7. And here hero folds and everyone folds. And I really think our hand was underplayed, and this is really the opposite of what you want to be doing here. We'll kind of move to the next hand, and I'm skipping some well-played hands. I'm just picking the interesting ones for you guys. So next hand, top right, pocket eights. And someone opens the 4x, which is too big. And we fold eights, which I guess just lack of attention. Definitely don't fold eights. It's making you money there. Even if people open bigger, it's still a play. And we'll quickly jump to the next hand. Don't need to spend too much time on what's probably a misclick. And now we're going to see a very nice, well-played hand by Hero. This is a limped pot. We have 10-3 of hearts on king 6-4 two-tone. Check to the original limper. He checks back. And he even times out and checks back. Turn king. And here this is really sort of an orphaned pot. He'd probably have stabbed with a piece a lot of the time. So taking a stab at it, I feel like makes a ton of sense. And we do and take it down. I think just good play. You don't need equity in these kind of spots where someone limped and doesn't show interest. Just go for it. Even the fact that he limps kind of tells you he's not too tricky. He just has a hand he wants to hit with, and just take it when he gives it to you. We'll quickly go to the next one. Here we have ace 10 of clubs, a limper again. An amazing sight. You can see how often we have weaker players in the hand. So we raise, we get 3-bet, and we're going to call the 3-bet. Ace 5-9 rainbow. Very important here to understand the relative hand strength that we have. So the context here is our opponent's 3-betting range can have kings, queens, jacks. It can have some bluffs. So we're definitely doing well, but we're not looking to stack off kind of happily. Right? We mostly need to keep his weaker hands in. So he goes small. That implies all of his range is still in there. So get used to thinking, what does the bet sizing imply about his range? Turn 7 of hearts. We check. Kind of a bricky card. Not too much gets there. River 5, kind of bricky as well. And here, what I would be thinking is, kind of the meat of my opponent's range to bet small and check back is often a hand like kings, queens, jacks, tens. Those are the main hands I'm expecting him to have. And so now I'm fairly happy about ace 10. I'd be looking to go for a fairly big bet. I'm not sure you can quite go all in, but you definitely need to bet something. And it's always good to think, which bluffs would I have here? I'd say if you think of the meat of his range as kings, queens, jacks, tens, definitely look to bluff. I mean, anything you floated, but also if you get here with something like deuces, threes, fours, I think those are actually reasonable hands to bluff the river with. If you get here with king, queen of hearts, kind of block kings and queens, so it's a bit trickier. You're kind of blocking the hands you want him to have. So here we bet third pot. I feel like it's just too small. We get called by queens. Feel like we could have gotten more there, so wanted to mention that one. And we're gonna go to the last hand I wanted to discuss in this video. Not too many hands to discuss because our Upswing Lab member just tended to play a lot of hands well. And next hand we're gonna have the good old ace king offsuit on the top left. We 3-bet. Kind of deep, we get called, and the original razor folds. And here I want to talk about cold calling ranges because these are things that you're not really supposed to have. Most pros won't have these at all, so they're mostly recreational. And what does it mean and how do you play these spots? So I always think of cold calling ranges as hands that the guy has that want to see a flop but are not good enough to 4-bet. So the classics would be 9s, 10s, jacks, ace queen suited, ace jack suited, king queen suited. Some guys take it wider and have all the pocket pairs and suited connectors and some suited aces. Either way, terrible spot for our hand. I'd start out with a check and wave the white flag. but always keep laser focus on what happens and what it means for your opponent's range, because our opponent checks back. And if we think about it, a lot of guys, if they hit this board, they'd bet, because it's often a pair, they want protection. There are draws there, they want protection. Remember, whenever the board's very connected, you're against a weaker player, he's thinking, I want protection. And so when he doesn't bet turns of 4, I would think we actually very often have the best hand with ace-king. And I'd be looking to make a play at the pot, whether it's bet small just for protection. I could see a check call, I could see a check raise to blow him off of some equity or some weak pair, because sometimes someone doesn't bet just because he's scared. And so even if he has 9s, maybe he's bet folding. Here our opponent suddenly bets big. Honestly, I'm just a bit of a non-believer, so I would look to just go with this one. I feel like this is an ace, queen, ace, jack, king, queen. And that's very level 1 hand reading, but I think that's what you want to be doing here for the most part. That's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see me elaborate on more of this stuff, we have a great team of coaches. I think probably the best poker course on the market right now at Upswing Lab 2.0. We'll see you guys in the next video.